and welcome to episode number 9 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And first of all, I wanted to wish Sahil a happy birthday. We're recording on his birthday, although unless something crazy happens, I'm not going to get it up to you tonight, and you probably won't be hearing this until after his birthday, but happy birthday, Sahil.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to be back in the full-time hosting role. Still have one more classes worth of work to finish, but time is now permitting me to come back and record, so I'm excited to be back on the show.
And do you anticipate getting any presents for yourself in terms of players acquiring tonight? Any birthday present players on your list?
I have been talking one trade, and I do have another offer out there. Would love to get that offer done. I also have several other ideas floating around in my head, but I think I've made most of the major moves that I want to make at this point, and a lot of it's going to kind of be some of the smaller moves. I guess it's more of a you never know, but I think for the most part, maybe you see a minor move for me today, but I don't anticipate anything major.
Mm-hmm. Let's start out this episode by talking about the one big shakeup in the league that everyone's talking about, and that is, of course, Acuna Matata without Acuna has changed its name to Benintendi's Chicken Tendies. How about that?
What a great name. I thought Acuna Matata without Acuna was like pretty clever, like adding the without Acuna part. So I like that. But man, Benintendi's Chicken Tendies, just what a great name. Definitely one of the better names in the league, in my opinion. I applaud their creativity.
The only team name that can be sung to the tune of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song. So I love it already.
I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious. But no, I love this name for them. Hopefully this helps Benintendi bounce back a bit in real life. But what a name.
As far as names go, that's one of the better ones. Do you personally have a favorite team name in this league?
Oh, man. I'm always going to be biased towards the big league Yellow Champs. The executive batting order is just kind of a classic, so hard to go against that. But I think kind of beyond the classics, I feel like Benintendi's Chicken Tendies is my most favorite kind of creative name. And the Stanton Stranglers is also up there, as well as Danger Moose. I like that. Some very good names here, but I think Benintendi's Chicken Tendies, just in terms of the name value and not kind of looking at the history behind a name, is my current favorite.
All great names. I said in the Slack channel that executive batting order is kind of like our league's equivalent of the Los Angeles Dodgers, in that the name, the Dodgers, of course, refer to Trolley Dodgers, which is very much a 1920s thing that doesn't exist anymore. But it's still a classic name. And the executive batting order, Zane and Max are no longer the presidents, but it's still kind of a classic that stuck.
I was really hoping you and Duncan would have named yourselves the executive batting order after he took over as president. We got a 1 week matchup versus you two to determine who would be the real EVO.
Oh, we would have lost that. But yeah, the other name I like a lot is the Will Smith. It's a little harder to say. You got to kind of emphasize Wills, but it's kind of fun. He's got 2 Wills Smith on his team, so why not?
Yep, no, he's welcome for catcher Will Smith. That still haunts me, but definitely a great name.
In the past week, it's been announced that 2 players who we thought would be key parts of their teams in 2021 will not be playing in 2021. That is, of course, Mike Clevinger of Bo the Flow. He underwent Tommy John surgery, I believe, or another type of surgery, but he'll be out for he'll be out for the entire season. And Robinson Cano will, of course, miss the entire season due to a steroid suspension. But let's talk about how these losses will impact their 2 teams, Clayton Jake's team and Eric's team, respectively.
Yeah, I actually talked to Clayton and Jake earlier in the week about this. As soon as I saw the Clevinger news, I told them I had starting pitchers available, and they were interested in acquiring Eduardo Rodriguez. But the sense I got from them is that they're only going to take a deal for value here, and they're pretty happy with the rotation as is. They acquired Andrew Heaney in recent days. They got Strasburg. I know they traded away Snell, but they still have the likes of Luis Castillo, Zach Greinke, Lance Lynn, and Dylan Bundy, David Price, Frankie Montas. I mean, they've basically overhauled this rotation overnight. So while I think losing Snell through trades and losing Clevinger to the injury is going to hurt them, I still think they have one of the better rotations in this league. Albeit with some question marks, Greinke being, I think, 37 or 38 now, and he had the arm injury in the playoffs. Strasburg coming off of injury. Can Dylan Bundy keep it up? Can Frankie Montas bounce back? Is Andrew Heaney anything more than a kind of a back-end starter? So, could they make a move? Sure. And I get the sense that Clayton and Jake in particular are really gunning to make a lot of trades in December. And I get the sense that there's a couple trade targets in particular that they're looking at. But I think overall, if they didn't do anything to address the rotation in light of the Clevinger injury, I think they'd be in pretty decent shape going into the season rotation-wise.
Yeah, I think in the short term, it sounds like they don't plan on making moves and it's not that big of a deal. But in the long term, especially, I think not having a guy like Clevinger in your long-term plans hurts. And maybe they could sell him now before it's too late, because this is his second Tommy John surgery. And the track record of guys who've had multiple Tommy John surgeries is not good. And very, very worrisome for if he'll ever – first of all, will he ever come back and pitch again? And if so, how's he going to be? Is he just going to be Tim Lincecum after his surgeries? Is he going to come back and be anything like what he was this year and last year? I wouldn't put any sort of confidence in him going forward now, which is kind of sad, I'd say.
It is. And I mean, he already in 2019, I know he was dealing with some injury issues, only made 21 starts. He's only had one season where he's made a full 32 starts. That was 2018 through 200 innings. But other than that, his high was 126 innings. So, and he turns 30 exactly 1 month from today. So, he's on the kind of the wrong side there with the age. I think you're right. Maybe someone to trade away now. I bet that there'd be teams willing to buy low on him to see if he has anything left, especially some of these teams that could really use the rotation depth and are having a hard time kind of accumulating starters. But, this is definitely a big blow for them. I think they'll be fine. But, yeah, that's I don't know what you were thinking, but I think that Clevinger was probably their second best starter on their roster right now, only behind Luis Castillo. So
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you can trust him again. It's sad.
No, it's very unfortunate, but that's how it goes with starting pitchers.
Yeah. Well, they have Strasburg now. I'd say Strasburg might have been better than. I don't know.
The injury, Strasburg. I mean, I guess I wasn't on the week they traded Strasburg or for Strasburg. I bet you and Zay maybe went into this a bit more, but Strasburg is the lengthy injury history, and he's now 32 or 33.
Yeah.
Can you count on him to post a full season ever again? I don't think I've ever counted on him to give you 180. He's 32.
Yeah, that's true. He's another guy who's had a similar long injury history, but his peak is probably a little bit higher than Clevinger's, I would say.
Yeah, a little bit. Definitely a longer peak, but we'll see. I think this rotation has a lot of question marks, but they'll be probably fine going into the season. I'd say maybe they have the fourth best rotation in the league, but I think the gap between the haves with the rotations and the have-nots are very significant. So I think there's a steep drop-off between 3 and 4.
Yeah, and changing gears and talking about Eric's team now, he will be without Robinson Cano, and I know you and I have both talked about saying that he shouldn't be trying to count on Cano to be a starting second baseman for the full season. But it really sounded like before the suspension, Eric really thought he could be that guy for him.
Yeah, Eric thought he could be a 3,100 guy. I kind of doubted that. He's 38. He had a bad first full season with the Mets. A bit of a resurgence this year, but obviously now it seems like it's because of the PEDs. And, Eric rightfully caught him. He wasn't going to stash him all off season. And I think Eric, from talking to him, kind of views this as a blessing in disguise. I think that there are other players that he can now, use that are a bit younger and maybe have a bit more utility to him moving forward, and kind of see how they do, while also freeing up a roster spot for him. So I don't think he was really counting on him, or he was counting on him, but I don't think he was counting on him to the degree that, say, Clayton and Jake were counting on Clevinger. So I don't think this is a huge loss for him, and I actually think this might help him in the long run. But given, Cano's 2020 season, it's definitely some lost production, that Eric is going to have to replace. And I don't know if this opens him up to a trade maybe, but I know Eric seems pretty happy with the way his roster is constructed as is. So it'll be interesting to see how he, responds to this development, but I don't expect anything major coming out of Eric that's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to the Cano suspension.
Yeah, I agree. He didn't make any direct additions. He just promoted Devin Williams to fill that spot. Maybe he has something in the works. We don't know. Maybe he expects Heriberto Hernandez to somehow get called up 5 levels and change positions to second base. Who knows? But I expect Eric, if he doesn't make a big move, he'll find someone worthwhile during the season to fill that spot.
I agree. I mean, we've talked about how Eric does a great job managing his team, so I know he'll find some random guy to plug in pretty easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's transition over to the trades. Surprise, surprise, I was involved in every single trade this week, so I'll kind of kick things off here. I wanted to first start off with the trade I made with Cam. Luis Matos and Connor's 2023 third went to Cam for Jameson, Taillon, and Lewin Diaz, who I later traded this week for Cam's 2024 second and Owen Miller. Briefly from my perspective, and then I'll let Cam weigh in. Taillon was someone who I thought could really bounce back. He in 2018 posted a 3.20 ERA. As a 26-year-old, I mean, that's fantastic. It looked like he was really going to develop into, a top-end starter. 2019, he struggled a bit coming out of 4.10 ERA, and then he got hit with Tommy John. So he's missed about a season and a half. But we've seen what he can be at his peak. And he's someone, was reasonably high on and I thought would be a pretty decent gamble. And getting Lewin Diaz back, I thought solid prospect that I could flip, which I ended up doing. And I like Matos, and I know Cam likes Matos, but I thought he was someone I was willing to give up to take the gamble on Taillon. Any more thoughts, Cam?
Yeah, Taillon, I asked around. No one in the league really seems to have much interest in him. I like him. I think he could bounce back, but I'm just not counting on it. And yeah, I like Matos a lot. He's a guy with pretty high upside, who a lot of people are saying could be a top 50 prospect by this time next year. Connor's 2023 third. I don't know, maybe that's in the 24, 25 range, or 25, 26 range. We'll see. And Lewin Diaz, it was tough to give him up, but because he has hit well in the minors, but he's the worst prospect I had, and he was going to be the guy I'd cut anyway. And just in terms of getting rid of Taillon, it gave me a little bit of flexibility on my roster. There wasn't much room for him the way my team is currently constructed anyway. And I think, yeah, that clears a little stuff up to help me be flexible.
Yeah, no, I thought it helped us both accomplish our goals well. And actually, 2 days later, it helped me close another deal. The big deal that went down this week, I traded Eddie Rosario, Eduardo Rodriguez, Jameson Taillon, my 2026 first-round pick, and my 2026 second-round pick to Benintendies Chicken Tendies, the first trade they've made under the new name, for Brandon Woodruff, Joey Wendell, and Heriberto Hernandez, who, as we know, might have actually been involved in one of the more controversial trades in league history. But I'll speak from both perspectives here. From my perspective, I really liked getting Brandon Woodruff. I think he's a top 10 to 15 dynasty starting pitcher. I thought that he actually took a lot of steps this year just in the shortened season with developing some of his other pitches and becoming more of a complete pitcher. He already had that really fantastic fastball. I think it was the third ranked fastball behind Garrett Cole and Jack Flaherty's in 2019. Yeah, he's someone I really like. 305 ERA, 320 FIP, 329 xFIP, in 73 and 2/3 innings this year. The one thing I'd like to see him do a bit more is go deeper into games. He actually did a little bit better job doing that in 2020. So I'm pretty optimistic he can do that more in 2021 if he can give me 180 innings. But even if he's only going about 160 or so with those strikeout numbers, he struck out 11.12 K per nine in 2020. And with the low ERA, I mean, he's going to be a top asset. Wendell and Hernandez were guys that Alex was going to cut, and I thought, hey, why not? I'll take them, and they could be decent trade chips. Wendell, I flipped for the third, and we'll talk more about the Hernandez deal in a bit. From Alex's perspective, though, I also really like this for him, and this, is a trade I think will end up being a win-win. Eddie Rosario is a guy that was knocked down a couple pegs for me just because of the low OBP. He's going to hit 30 homers and 100 ribbies wherever he goes. So the run production will be there, and he'll hit for a high average, but he just doesn't walk a bunch. I'm making a shift more towards a higher OBP team, so I thought it made sense for me to get rid of him. But I think he's a really nice fit for their offense. Eduardo Rodriguez was sixth in the AL Cy Young voting in 2019. I know he missed 2020 with the heart issue, and that's just one of those things where it's like, who knows how he's going to bounce back. But all the reports seem pretty positive on him. It seems like he's 100% ready to go for 2021. So while I don't think he or Taillon has the upside that Woodruff does necessarily, I think that they're both very good starting pitchers, and if they both bounce back, I mean, they're both still in their 20s. They can make this trade look very good for Alex. And obviously, getting the 2026 first and second round pick, those do seem far away, but he has traded away his 2023 and 2025 first round picks to EVO. So it gives him a little more flexibility in trade talks, and, I think those picks could have some value down the line. So they definitely did get a lot of value in this trade, and I think it really could be a win-win. I personally prefer consolidating the value there, but I think that they got a lot of depth and a lot of good pieces. So this will be an interesting one to look at in a couple years and see who really won this deal.
Yeah, I think you got a steal here. Taillon, we've talked about, but you're trading picks 6 years in the future away. Eduardo Rodriguez was nothing. I have no confidence in him. And you got Brandon Woodruff. I'm not the biggest fan of Brandon Woodruff. I mean, I like him. I don't think he's a top 20 guy like you do, but I think he's clearly the best player in this trade. And then you got Heriberto Hernandez as the throw-in you somehow turned into something else we'll talk about soon, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Joey Wendell is another throw-in, but you got a non-zero thing for him.
Yep.
So I think you did well in this deal.
No, I think so too. And, I mean, a rotation of Cole, Flaherty, Nola, Fried, Woodruff, Corbin, Carrasco, Sonny Gray, Hendricks, and Urquidy I don't know how anyone's beating that in 2021, and I'm really excited to see all these guys just knock it out of the park. So, but let's transition here to the 3-team deal that went down yesterday. The second 3-team deal in league history. Interestingly enough, the first 3-team deal we made in league history involved 16 players. This one involved only 2 players, but 13 picks. I'm not going to go too in-depth into this. I think it was talked about a lot in the chat, but I'll speak briefly about what each side got. I like that I was able to get rid of the first-round pick condition with EVO. If you all recall from the Tatis deal, I needed to send them a future first. I had 4 years to do it, but obviously I had an incentive to kind of get that out of the way early so I wouldn't have restrictions with the trades. I thought the 2025 first would be like the best case scenario because maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, but I still think I'll be pretty good in 2025 with my ability to trade and with the relative youth of my roster. So having that be the pick that reverts to EVO is kind of a no-brainer for me. And I still got some positive value getting 2 second-round picks in the deal in 2021, even if I also had to give up a 2024 second, and also getting Tristan Lutz, who I still think is a pretty solid prospect. So I liked it from my perspective. From EVO's perspective, they just acquired like a crap ton of picks. They got 5 second-round picks in this deal. I know they gave up 1, so they netted 4 second-round picks, and they still got to keep my 2025 first-round pick. So that'll be an interesting, fun fact for the league moving forward, is that they technically acquired my 2025 first-round pick twice in this deal, because that was one of the picks that originally went to them in that Tatis deal. But I like this from EVO's perspective. From Eric's perspective, he's talked a bunch in the chat about how great Heriberto Hernandez is, and I'm not going to repeat that. That actually gave me some pause in trading him. He kind of reminded me a lot of what Yordan Alvarez was, just like someone who wasn't on the radar as a top 100 guy that just kept mashing in the minors. But I also think there's some question marks with his swing, and how he's going to do against advanced pitching. So I think that the power is going to be there, but, let's see if that can really translate into being an all-around player. And, the threshold for being, someone who's a good dynasty asset is not just a regular MLB starter. It's someone who is a complete hitter. I don't know if he ever actually becomes that, but I think that, from Eric's perspective, that's the type of guy to gamble on. And he had a bunch of picks. So, giving him all these second-round picks is not really something I think that is a huge deal for him. One last tidbit I'll throw in, and then we can transition here. I was prepared to just trade him for Anthony's 2022 second-round pick and a 2026 third-round pick at one point, and then was going to ask for another second-round pick when I woke up yesterday morning. And then, this whole rant went on by Zane, the whole Bernie rant. And then, Zane ended up getting in on it. So just kind of interesting to see how these things develop in this league. You never know how things are going to work with this Dynasty League, but happy to see another 3-team trade go down. And I'm happy to have accumulated some picks overall this week. And hopefully I can turn those picks into something to help my major league team.
Yeah, I mean, we've all heard my thoughts on this trade. I feel like you made out like a bandit. Heavy Metal Hernandez he's a good prospect, but like 3 second-rounders and a third, come on. It's like, it feels like the entire league has just gone crazy in terms of what draft picks are worth. Like, I feel like draft picks have taken on a negative value. You would have to pay a team to take a draft pick from you. It's like, what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's, teams have different valuations for different players. And, it's just kind of taking advantage of that. For example, Andrew was looking at his team and was like, look, I can add a 50 FV prospect and only have to give up a third round pick that's in 2024. He's looking at it from that perspective, and he's like, all right, I'll close on this trade. Looking at it from Eric's perspective, he really liked Heriberto Hernandez, and he had these extra picks, so maybe he was willing to overpay a little bit. And a lot of those picks aren't for a few years, so they're not really going to help him. So, it's people have different values on different picks and different players at different times, and that's why we're able to make so many trades in this league. I get it. Maybe some of these prospects are valued differently than, certain people agree with, but it's just, you got to take advantage of the market any way you can. These picks can, Zane mentioned yesterday how these picks just seem to fluctuate in value, and I would agree with that. But it's interesting just to kind of see, how this is all playing out. So all I can say is just keep taking advantage of the opportunities that are available.
Yeah, I guess that's what you have to do. And one brief thing, while this trade talks were going down, I kind of posited the question, would you rather have 1 first rounder or 3 second rounders? And no one really gave an answer to that, so I'm kind of curious because I'm not sure what I would pick.
That's a tough one. I think part of it depends where the first and seconds end up in the round. If one of the seconds is like pretty early in the round, I think I could be like, 3 second round picks. There might not be too much of a difference between where the first and the second ends up, and I get multiple seconds. That was a debate I was having because I thought Anthony's 2022 second would be a lottery pick. In the first round pick I get would be late in the round. But if you reasonably think that the first round pick is not going to be in the 10 to 12 range, I think I'd pick the first round pick.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. It depends on where the second rounders are. I think second rounders do have a fairly high hit rate, and so in that, but at the same time, you have to roster 3 guys as opposed to 1 guy, and it's tricky. I don't really know if there's a good answer for it, and I guess it depends on how your team is constructed, how you like the bottom guys in your farm system.
No, absolutely. It's just a lot of factors here, and I think one of the beauties of this league that I really like is every team has a very different philosophy for team building. So I think that you could posit this question to the league and you get a bunch of different answers.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way my team is set up right now, I would take the 1 first rounder unless it's at the back and the second rounders are near the front. But yeah, like you said, it really depends on the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break, but after that is going to be our 2010 fake draft. And for those of you who didn't see my explanation in the Slack channel, basically, I am pretending that the date is January 10th, 2010, and I will be drafting the first round of our hypothetical prospect draft that we'd be doing roughly at that time. Players eligible to be guys who are international signings of the previous year, or draftees, of course. And since we're pretending it's 2010, I'm not taking into effect anything that's happened in their career since then. So Dustin Ackley is, of course, one of the top hitting prospects in the league still. And I think it's going to be a fun time. I've randomized the draft order, and we're gonna call it like we're actually in a commentary booth for the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to starting this segment.
Don't stop, make it pop, DJ, blow my speakers up tonight. I'ma fight till we see the sunlight. Tick tock on the clock, but the party don't stop.
Hello and welcome to the 2010 Minor League Draft. The date, of course, today is January 10th, 2010. You just heard Tik Tok by Kesha, the #1 song in the world right now, as you all know. And I'm very excited to be here. How about you, Sahil?
I am very excited to do this segment. I am looking forward to talking about this draft.
Yeah, a lot of great players to be drafted. Or really, there's no intrigue. There's no mystery about who's going to be taken number one. With Eric's pick, Steven Strasburg, of course, the starting pitcher drafted by the Nationals, number one overall just a few months ago, generational prospect. He's electric out of San Diego State. So there's no question there. But after that, there's a little bit of mystery, wouldn't you say? Ackley at number two seems like probably a given to Anthony. But other than that, there are a lot of guys who I think could crack that top three or maybe even top two.
Yeah, I'd agree. Strasburg is definitely the consensus top pick. After everything he did at San Diego State, generational pitching prospect. I mean, I think you summed it up. I think that he could be an ace for the next decade for the number one overall team.
Eric, of course.
Yeah, Eric, of course. And I think Ackley is, a very solid pick. I mean, you're getting a college player who could play multiple positions, has swung a good bat, is someone who could, come up the minor leagues pretty quickly and make a difference for a team. And, I think he'd be a pretty reasonable second overall pick. But like you said, there are a lot of good options here. And, Donovan Tate obviously has looked very impressive. He's an outfielder coming out of Cartersville High School in Georgia. Looks like he could be a potential five-tool player. And, there's some other guys just kind of up and down the board in the first round.
The issue with Tate, of course, is the injuries that he suffered. We may see him slide to the back half of the first round.
Yeah.
One guy I'm hearing a lot of buzz about is the young outfielder for the Angels, Michael Trout.
Yes.
Of course, for those of you who have MLB Network, he was the only player who showed up to the draft. Got taken near the back half of the first round, but he has just absolutely exploded onto the scene. He is shooting up into the top 50 already of some prospect lists. And one mystery team told Greg that he is number 3 on their board, which is just absolutely wild. I have no idea where we're going to see him land.
That's high praise because, he's a 25th overall pick in the draft, and for him to shoot up to number 3 on one of these, dynasty draft boards is pretty interesting. Sure, maybe that's a pick the Yankees would like to have back. That pick was originally theirs, but it went to the Angels as compensation for signing Mark Teixeira. I don't think they regret having Mark Teixeira at first base at all, but if Mike Trout ends up being someone who is worth that top 3 pick in a dynasty draft, then, maybe that's someone they'd like to have too. But, knowing the Yankees, I'm sure it'll find a way to eventually get Trout on their roster. They could sign him as a free agent or something. So,
yeah, that's something they do if he turns out to be a star. And the Angels sure think he can be.
Yeah.
The other news, Eric ruled just within the past couple of days, Cuban phenom Aroldis Chapman is ineligible for the draft. Not something too surprising, unless he signed within the next couple minutes. He, of course, has been clocked at 102 miles an hour on his fastball. Probably would be maybe even the second overall pick here if he does get signed. I know the Mets are looking at him. I know the Red Sox are looking at him as well as a couple other teams, but God, he'd be a great guy to have.
Yeah, especially if he could stick as a starter and maintain that velocity. I think he'd easily be one of the top starting pitchers in the league. And even as a reliever, I think he could be a solid closer, maybe someone who pitches multiple innings and really plays an important role for a team. I think if you project him more as a reliever, I wouldn't use a top 2 pick on him. But given the upside that he could potentially be a starter, I think that's someone that you could, definitely take with the number 2 overall pick if he is eligible. Of course, it doesn't look like he is eligible, but definitely would be someone I would strongly consider taking there up near the top after Strasburg.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. If that fastball does cause a little bit of concern in the way of injuries, and maybe if he is a full-time starter, that velocity will dip below 102. There are rumors that he could hit 105, but God, who knows? And that's a good way to transition into the international guys who are eligible. Guys who we think may be drafted. Miguel Sano, third baseman with the Twins. He could be a borderline first rounder. Gary Sanchez, we expect to see in the second round at some point, catcher with the Yankees. Jose Iglesias, very interesting name I'm seeing because some sources say he's a shortstop with the Red Sox. MLB has put him in their top 50 already.
Wow.
Wild. And that's mostly based on defense. He was not one of the top guys in terms of money paid to him, but the defensive profile looks good. And I think a couple teams could see that ranking and perhaps pick him a little higher for that than maybe his fantasy value would be. And then the most interesting international guy, I would say, is Japanese free agent Ryota Igarashi. He is projected to slot right into that bullpen. He's going to project to be the setup man for that team. So maybe a team, he might be a reach in the first round, but maybe if a team sees a hold to something they need to get, he's absolutely a guy I think will get them from day one.
He signed with the Mets. Am I correct?
Yes.
You know, they have Francisco Rodriguez closing there. I mean, we all know what he did a couple seasons ago, the historic 62 saves with the Angels to break the record. And, you know, there's some other decent bullpen pieces here, but he's someone that they really like. And I think that he could really just like kind of grab a big role in this bullpen early on and, you know, really be successful. So, you know, potentially if you're a winning team that's kind of looking for that immediate impact guy, he might not have the highest upside just because he's going to be a reliever and he's going to be in a bullpen that for the time being at least has one of the top closers in baseball. But, you know, if you're someone who's really looking for holds or really looking for ratios right now to help you win a championship, you know, maybe taking him is better than kind of taking a lottery pick guy that you might be taking kind of towards the back half of the first round or in the second round.
I agree. And I think it'll be exciting to see where he goes. And it looks like the first team is on the clock. That is Eric.
Yep.
And I believe we all know who the pick is going to be, and I believe he's announcing it right now. Okay, with the first pick in the 2010 minor league draft, Eric has selected Steven Strasburg, starting pitcher, Washington Nationals.
Yep, great pick. He'll be the anchor of Eric's rotation for a good decade.
Yeah, I mean, God, this guy, could the hype be any higher on him? I mean, I know Bryce Harper right now is a guy the Nationals are probably going to take number one in this upcoming draft, and he's got a similar level of hype, a high schooler from Nevada. But as far as pitchers go, who was the last guy who's had this kind of hype? Justin Verlander, and he's an ace.
Yeah, and Verlander actually didn't even go number one overall, if you recall. Matt Bush was the first overall pick in that draft, strangely enough. But yeah, we haven't seen this level of hype from a starting pitcher in a while. Given how volatile starting pitcher prospects can be, it'll be interesting to see if Strasburg can live up to the hype. He obviously has an electric arm and a lot of potential, but, you know, a lot can happen between now and reaching the majors. But if he could stay healthy, I don't see a reason why he can't, you know, be at least top 20 starter with a top 5 starter ceiling in all of baseball. Maybe even as soon as next year.
Yeah,
maybe he comes up late in the season. And I mean, it really depends on how, you know, quickly the Nationals end up promoting him. But he could be a difference maker early on, I think, more so than anybody else who's going to get picked today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, some people are saying he's major league ready right now. It's a little tricky. He didn't pitch in the minors last year, and I know a lot of people in previous drafts have taken minor hits for that, but Strasburg is just a generational type guy.
I agree.
All right, and it looks like Anthony's pick is in. The second pick in the 2010 prospect draft, Anthony's team, Team Resnick, has selected, no surprise here, Dustin Ackley, infielder, Seattle Mariners, from the University of North Carolina.
Yeah, maybe a university I'll be at in a decade.
Perhaps.
But Ackley, I mean, was the best college hitter, and he has a lot of polish. I think he's someone who could quickly rise up the minor league ranks like Strasburg and really make an impact for that Mariners team, a team that's been starved for offense for years. I mean, they already have Ichiro. Imagining kind of an Ichiro Ackley 1-2 up there. And with how often Ichiro gets on base, Ackley could have a lot of opportunities to drive in some runs. A great pick. I think that was the correct pick for number 2. I think that's the safest pick. There are definitely a lot of other players I like in this draft, but there's a reason Ackley won second overall, and I expect him to be a solid contributor for the years to come.
I agree, yeah. Ackley, Anthony's lucky to have him. People said he's the greatest college hitter in a generation. And like Strasburg, he did not play in the minors this season, but we got a little taste from him in the fall league. 412 on base percentage. Really great guy to have at the top of the lineup. The power wasn't quite there, but I mean, he'll turn it around. He hit for power in college. Baseball America's number 11 prospect. Baseball Prospectus is the number 12 prospect. MLB.com's number 15, one ahead of Brett Wallace and Kyle Drabeck, who, I mean, these are huge names. Yeah, great. Going to be a great hitter. And I think in a doubles league, I expect him to hit a lot of doubles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, two can't miss prospects at the top of this draft. Hard to go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. This was definitely a good year to have one of the top 2 picks.
Yep, so Yuki's pick. Yuki's on the clock right now, and I believe his pick is in.
Let's hear it.
With the third pick in the 2010 prospect draft, Moneyball has selected Tony Sanchez, catcher of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Wow. I got to admit, I don't know about this one. This is, I think, the first point in the draft where I think you could argue that there were some different directions to go. I don't know if Tony Sanchez is necessarily the right pick here. I don't know if he's kind of like the Wieters type where you were a bit confident that he's really going to develop into this top line catcher. I think Sanchez is a great prospect. But I think that there were some other players on the board. I'm sure some that are going to get drafted here in a bit, like Donovan Tate, someone who I think could be a 5-tool outfielder for the Padres, and someone that has a lot more upside maybe than Sanchez is going to offer. I just generally am not the biggest fan of rostering catchers or rostering catchers in your minor league team in a dynasty league. That being said, he's still going to be one of the better dynasty catchers. But I think I might have gone Tate here. Although we all know how much Yuki loves catchers, so maybe we shouldn't be so surprised that this was the pick. Yeah,
I agree. Yuki loves his catchers. Donovan Tate. Tony Sanchez, not in MLB.com's top 50. Baseball Perspective has him at 75. But, God, this guy mashed. I mean, 173 WRC plus. Does WRC plus exist yet? He had a 316 average, 415 on base percentage in single A with the Pirates. This guy's going to hit, and I think catchers are tough to come by. He was the 4th overall pick in the draft, so this is our first time kind of straying from the actual draft order with Strasburg 1, Ackley 2. Pirates' current catcher, Ryan Domit, I think some of his best days are behind him. He had a 127 OPS plus in 2008, but last year that dipped immensely. His on-base percentage was below 300, so I think there's no reason to suspect that Tony Sanchez won't have a starting spot within the next couple of years. And I think if he hits like he did in the minors this year, he is going to be a stud.
Yeah, we all know how hard it is to find a dynasty catcher. So, if Sanchez is the guy, he's going to have immense value. I'm just not the type of guy who wants to take a risk that early, with a catcher, unless I am absolutely sure, kind of like I mentioned with Matt Weeder. So, I prefer to shop around the fringes for one. So, I think a little bit of a disagreement here, but I do get the pick, and I think Sanchez has a lot of upside. This isn't – nothing I'm saying is to say Sanchez is a bad player. I think would have gone in a different direction.
Yeah, certainly interesting. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, up next is Alex Fisher's pick. Acuna Matata before Acuna is the name of this team. It doesn't really make any sense. I don't know why his team is called that. What does Acuna mean? With the fourth pick in the 2010 minor league draft, Acuna Matata before Acuna selects Jacob Turner, starting pitcher, Detroit Tigers. Feels like a tiny bit of a reach. He was 9th overall, but we know this league loves its Tigers prospects.
Well, I'll start out by saying I wonder if Turner's Chicken Tendies could be a potential name for him now.
Interesting. Yeah.
But, yeah. This is interesting because Turner was the 5th pitcher off the board. There were 6 pitcher. 5 pitchers went off the board before him: Steven Strasburg, Matt Hopgood, Zach Wheeler, Mike Minor, and Mike Leake. And I kind of get it with the Tigers fandom, but I wonder if one of the other starting pitchers, Wheeler, Minor, or Leake, would have been better. I mean, in particular, Minor and Leake as college pitchers might be able to shoot up that farm system a little quicker and make more of an impact. Wheeler's also very solid, so I'm not as high on Hopgood. But Turner is not a bad pick, and I think, he could really be someone to help anchor that Tigers rotation for years to come up there with Verlander.
Jacob Turner, he is fairly high on certain lists. He's high on a lot of lists, despite the fact that he didn't pitch in the minors this past year. 3 of the first 4 picks did not play in the minors. Kind of crazy. Turner is ranked 26th in Baseball America, 25 on BP, and number 42 on MLB.com. So the experts do like him. He everything I'm hearing saying he's pretty polished. His fastball could be touching on 99 miles an hour. That's a guy you'd love to have, assuming he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And I think maybe he's a guy in a normal world he'd go 5 or 6, but the Tigers fandom from Alex pushes him up into the top 4.
Yeah, I definitely think this is someone maybe he could have traded down and gotten and maybe picked up some extra value, but hard to dispute a Tigers fan wanted to take their first-round pick here. So, Turner's an interesting arm, and, we'll see how he develops. I will say, I think after Strasburg, I don't think any of these arms are sure things. So it'll be really interesting to see how the pitchers take in that 5 to – oh, wow, there were not just 5 to 9, I was about to say, but 5 to 12. There were 8 straight pitchers taken. And then after a shortstop one at 13, Grant Green, 2 more pitchers were taken. So that's like 10 pitchers in an 11-pick span. It'll be interesting to see which one of those end up, really breaking out and which ones end up being a bust. I think it's just so hard to tell, but I think Turner's a pretty decent gamble.
Yeah, I agree. And looks like Alex and Daniel's pick is in. With the 5th pick in the 2010 minor league prospect draft, I wanted this guy. They have selected Mike Leake, starting pitcher, Cincinnati. God.
Yeah, the Reds fan.
I tried to trade up into the top 5 or 6 to get him. I really did.
The Reds fan in you obviously wants him. like I said, polished starting pitcher. He's someone I think can shoot up the minors particularly quickly.
I mean, there's talk of him skipping the minors entirely. Could you? And that's why he shot up to number 5, because a couple articles came out like that. But even if he does make the majors soon with a quick stop in Double A or so, that's still incredible.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he's making an impact early in dynasty leagues, that's good, and I think it's just kind of a good sign in general because. To me, when I hear they might promote him to the majors immediately, that shows me that he is an advanced arm that's really ready to make a difference. I think that he could be a solid pick, and it'd be interesting to see just how much of an impact he'll make early on, for Alex and Daniel.
Yeah, I agree. Alex and Daniel clearly thought that he could slide into their rotation right away. A rotation that had a bit of issues. They just barely missed the playoffs this year. And what we saw of Leak in the Arizona Fall League this past fall was just impressive. 137 ERA. It was only 20 innings, but he didn't allow a single home run. He walked just 3 batters. And God, the Reds really think that he can join the team right away. And this is interesting. I'm not sure. I can't remember the last time we saw a player like this, but just for fantasy purposes, that's incredible.
Absolutely. And one thing I'll add is it's interesting that we're talking about the 8th overall pick in the MLB draft being the one who comes to the majors immediately and not one of the first 7 guys picked, So that's...
Yeah, I mean, Dustin Ackley probably could potentially,
yeah.
but I don't know. He's certainly polished enough.
Strasburg in theory too, but I think both the Nationals and the Mariners are going to be a little more careful with these investments and give them a little bit of seasoning in the minors. So definitely interesting to see this unique dynamic with Mike Leake, and we'll see if he wins a competition for one of the starting pitcher jobs in spring training here in a few months.
Yeah. So up next is you're picking next, Sahil. Do you want to announce your pick?
You know what? We'll let you keep doing these.
All right. With the 6th overall pick in the 2010 minor league draft, Sahil, you have selected Donovan Tate, outfielder, Padres. I know he's a guy. Were you surprised to see him fall to number 6?
I was, and I think this could be the steal of the draft. He 5-tool outfielder. I think that he has a lot of potential. I think there's a little bit of risk in his profile. But I think if he comes up and really hits the ground running in the majors, I mean, I think he could be one of those top 5-10 outfielders, and he can contribute in a lot of different categories, not just with home runs, but with speed, doubles, batting average, OBP, all of that. So great. I feel like it's a great value here at what pick are we at? Number 6 here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm very happy overall. I think I would have taken him as early as 3, as I mentioned when we were kind of debating him and Tony Sanchez. So very happy. And interesting that I'm actually making a 1st-round pick because it seems like I mostly make 3rd-round picks and just trade away to 1st-round picks. So nice to actually make one for once.
I mean, yeah, you're here picking 6. It must have been – I mean, we've talked on the podcast about how devastating it was for you to miss the playoffs in the final week.
Yeah, heartbroken.
But yeah, Donovan Tate, God, I mean, yeah, like you said, 5 tools. But I talked a little bit beforehand about the injuries, and they are bad. He didn't play at all this minor league season because of the injuries. We're worried. What's the speed going to look like when he comes back? And a little bit about the patience. Some scouts have worried about his eye, but God, he's quick. And yeah, you got a good one here, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely some concerns, but I think with the upside, with the 6th pick, kind of looking at some of the other guys here, that's something that I really need to consider. And, it is a pitcher-heavy draft, as I kind of alluded to earlier. And, I generally think that, there is no such thing as a pitching prospect, really. I think there's just too many questions. So what your options are: the number 3 overall pick, who is an outfielder, or kind of looking at this group of starting pitchers and trying to be like, okay, which one of them is going to be the guy that breaks out? I think even with Tate's questions, it's kind of easier to go with the safer player here. I think after Tate, the next available position player was drafted 13th overall. And I think that there's a pretty big drop off between Donovan Tate and the guy who was picked 13, that is Grant Green. So I think that this is a move that just makes sense. And, dare I say, there might even be a bit of a teardrop from here.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew's pick is in. And with the 7th pick in the 2010 minor league prospect draft, Andrew has selected Jose Iglesias, shortstop for the Red Sox.
Wow. I don't know how I feel about this one. A lot of Iglesias's profile is predicated on his defense. And I think that alone is going to give him a very solid chance of sticking in the major leagues and contributing for a team. I think the question then becomes, how is he going to do with the bat? Because that's going to determine whether he's more of a utility player or a low-end starter versus, someone who is one of the top shortstops in the league. I'm not totally sold on the bat. So what I think you got here is probably the player behind, say, Strasburg, Ackley, and Leake, that I think might be the most likely to reach the majors, but not necessarily someone who I expect to have the ceiling of those guys. So I question this pick a little bit. I generally like the idea of getting a guy that is going to be a contributor, but I think that only makes sense if he has a bit of a higher ceiling. So I think Iglesias is someone maybe I would have taken in the 2nd round, maybe 7, 8, 9 picks later than he's going right now. But I don't see why, he deserves to be the number 7 pick when there's still some interesting names on this board, both hitter and pitcher-wise. I wonder if Grant Green, the shortstop out of Southern California, 113th overall to the A's, would have been a better pick if Andrew would have wanted to go shortstop here.
Yeah, certainly a little surprising. It kind of reeks a bit like a reading the rankings and not digging too far in move.
Yeah.
Iglesias hit 45 on the MLB's top prospect rankings. Project Prospect has him as high as 38, which is surprising. They're saying the defense is MLB ready, which kind of could give him the potential to stick around in the majors. He's kind of got, I don't know, maybe an Alexei Ramirez type profile. Of course, a guy who's a great fielder but can't exactly hit super well. Everyone loves the glove, though, and they think maybe Andrew thinks if he can hit enough singles, get that on base percentage 350 while getting a whole bunch of at-bats, maybe the Red Sox will lead him off. They have right now at shortstop Marco Scutaro, I believe. He's kind of the opposite profile, but I can't imagine they'll stick with him too much longer.
No, he's a veteran. I definitely think Jose Iglesias is a shortstop of the future there. I think that's what they're planning. One other concern I have, though, is they think that the defense is MLB ready and they rush him up. I wonder if, there's some concerns with maybe they're not giving him enough time to develop the bat. And
yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah, maybe he has to learn a bit on the fly in the majors with the bat, and I wonder if that ends up hurting him long run. So overall, safe player with kind of a safe floor, but not a lot of ceiling. I think there's better picks that could have been made here. But someone I expect to be a major league contributor in some capacity, whether it's a utility guy, a low-end starting shortstop, or if everything breaks right, which I'm not predicting, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, maybe he becomes a stud shortstop.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe he can certainly hit. We've seen it before.
Absolutely.
Up next is Clayton and Jake. Their pick is in. And with the number 8 pick in the 2010 prospect draft, they have selected Michael Trout, outfielder, Los Angeles, Angels of Anaheim. High schooler from New Jersey, I believe it looks like.
Yeah, This is an interesting pick. First off, we're down now to the guy who was picked 25th overall. So there are a lot of guys, including a top 5 pick who hasn't been taken yet. And what's interesting too is the Angels took an outfielder to pick before they took Trout. And so interesting to see that the second outfielder that they picked in that back-to-back is the one who goes first. As I alluded to earlier, the Angels got Trout, the pick that they used on Trout because the Yankees signed Mark Teixeira. So good pick, so good for the Angels for, being able to get someone they like at least to replace Teixeira. This is tricky. There are some great starting pitchers still available here. Zach Wheeler is one of them. I wonder if maybe he would have been the better pick here. I think that he could develop into an ace. And keep in mind, the Giants have a very good track record with developing some of these starting pitchers. I know the Barry Zito signing was a bust, but, you got Tim Lincecum, Matt Cain.
Yeah, 2-time defending Cy Young champion.
Yeah. So, if Zach Wheeler can come up that pipeline just like them, that could be a devastating rotation. So I wonder if that would have been the right move here. But, Mike Trout, I think, as you mentioned earlier, did very well in rookie ball this year.
He absolutely tore it up. He's just rocketed up the rankings. He was picked 25th, but so many lists already have him just outside the top 50. BP has him 53rd. Project Prospect has him 54th. He's already reached low A, even if he was barely 18. And I think I'm a little concerned the Angels do have Torrey Hunter in center field right now. He doesn't seem like he's going to be going anywhere. God, he might have had his best season ever at the plate last year. But so he's still 18, so he's a couple of years away from the majors anyway. But God, Michael Trout, they love this guy.
Yeah. Solid pick by the Angels. I always want to be a little careful with being like, this prospect had a hot, 30 games in rookie ball, his first season, like we got to shoot him right up the rankings. So I'm a little concerned that maybe that's what's happening here. And, he could kind of maybe not have the best season next year and just suddenly just the bottom falls out in terms of the rankings. And I think that that's really hard to gauge with prospects who's just a flash in the pan versus who's actually legit in their rises. Yeah, I don't think Trout's a bad gamble here, but solid pick. Seems like he's rising up the boards. So I'm not going to argue too much with this pick. And, I think he's someone who could help Clayton and Jake's team moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. You look at some of the guys, just sorted list of guys who hit very well in low levels of the minors last year. You look, who are these people? Dylan Baird, Carlos Willoughby, Paul Goldschmidt. No one's ever heard of any of these guys. They're not going to be anything. But yeah, it's interesting to see the scouts love Trout.
Yeah.
And it looks like Ruthvik's pick is in, I believe. And let's go to it. With the 9th pick in the 2010 minor league draft, Ruthvik and Nick have selected Tyler Matzek, starting pitcher, Colorado Rockies.
I don't like this at all. First off, he's going to the Rockies. We all know what Coors Field's like. That's not a fun place to pitch. When was the last time the Rockies really developed a good pitching prospect? I can't name one. Maybe Ubaldo Jimenez. But even then, I think there's some question marks with Jimenez. But you look at
Jimenez had a 3.47 ERA last year in Coors Field.
Yeah, that's solid, right? But can you name anyone other than Jimenez?
God, is Josh Fogg still with the Rockies? I have no idea.
I'm not sure. The point stands. There's not a lot of successes there, and with that ballpark, the ERA is going to be artificially inflated. Meanwhile, Zach Wheeler is still sitting on this board, and he's in an organization that historically does well developing pitching. He was picked 5 picks earlier to Matzek for a reason. I don't know how you justify picking Matzek over Wheeler. So this is a little is a little kind of baffling to me. This is the first pick where I look at it and I'm like, why? Like, I just,
Yeah,
like, I can't defend it. I could defend Iglesias even though I didn't really understand the pick when there were some better players on the board, but I can't defend picking a Rocky starting pitcher with your first round pick when there are better players on the board.
yeah. I mean, I guess you could say that. Maybe being a little blinded by Coors Field. Well, Tyler Matzik, Baseball Perspective has a number 23 on their board. That's ahead of a lot of guys who have already been picked.
Sure.
And I think Ruthvik really likes him. Maybe they think that the Coors Field effect won't be that bad. They have kind of developed Ubaldo Jimenez into a borderline guy who could maybe be a stud. Zach Wheeler, it's a little tough. Him and Zach Wheeler are both kind of right, kind of neck and neck. I don't know which one. Well, I'm up next, so we'll see who I take. But the scouts love Matzik's mechanics, and they think maybe that's something that'll play at Coors Field. Who knows?
Look, as you said, they're neck and neck. If I had the option to pick between a player, if I think both of them are relatively equal, and I have the option to pick between a guy who's in one of the best pitchers parts in the league with a team that knows how to develop pitchers, or the player with a team in the biggest hitters park in the league by far, with a farm system, that hasn't really produced many good starting pitchers over years. And I mean, you're right about Jimenez. He's a guy I'd love to have in the Orioles right now, given the state of their rotation. I wonder if he'll ever make his way over to Baltimore. Fingers crossed. But if I have to decide between those two players, given the situations, I pick Wheeler. And obviously a lot can happen. Players can get traded, whatever. And you kind of want to trust the player, right? But and Matzik does have the good mechanics. But if you're deciding between two players and you think that they're fairly equal, you could take into account other factors besides whether or not like which one, like kind of their mechanics and some of their personal attributes. You could look at the situation around them. And here I think Ruthvik just kind of failed to take some of those factors into account. So I don't like this pick.
Yeah, certainly reasonable. And you might be pleasantly surprised by my next pick then. I'm up now, and with the 10th pick in the 2010 minor league prospect draft, I've selected Zach Wheeler.
Great pick. Best player left on the board. I can't argue with that. I think he might be the second best pitcher in this draft.
Well, I mean, that's very generous of you to say. I mean, I would have picked Leak ahead of him. I would have probably picked Jacob Turner ahead of him. And Matzik's tough. I probably would have picked Matzik over Wheeler had they both still been on the board. But I'm happy with him. He didn't pitch in the minors this year, but of course he's got that powerful arm. And I think maybe part of the reason he slid was that he is not in Jonathan Mayo's MLB.com top 50 prospects list, whereas Matzik and some other guys are. I know Baseball America seems to be the highest on him. They have him at number 49. BP has him down in the lower half of the top 100. But, God, I think the Giants' pitching development is second to none, and I think he can be just an absolute stud.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I'll kind of correct my statement here. I think Mike Leake, given how quickly he's expected to reach the majors, is probably the second pitcher I would have taken. I would agree with that. And then I think it's more of an argument of like, who do you go between, like, say, Minor and Wheeler? Maybe, I'm just very biased against Matzik with the Rockies fit and just not liking it. And maybe I actually would have taken Minor over Wheeler just because Minor is a college pitcher with a little more polish. Maybe he could come up a bit earlier, but I really like Wheeler. So I think that this is one of the steals of the first round. I think you could have argued he could have gone as, a lot earlier, a few picks earlier, and I probably wouldn't have batted an eye. It's a crapshoot with these starting pitcher prospects.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of the starting pitcher prospects, we've now seen two pitchers in a row taken, and I believe, what is it, four total?
Uh,
One,
yeah,
one,
I think
two.
Strasburg, Leak, Matt's
Strasburg, Turner, Leak, Matzik, Wheeler. That's five now. Whereas your guy Matt Hobgood, Orioles starting pitcher, and you've been very vocal about this in the Slack, so maybe you don't need to go too into it. But he was the second starting pitcher off the board. Do you think he's a guy who could maybe should have been picked right by now?
No, 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 because I think any smart Orioles fan knows that the Orioles only took him to save money. Hobgood was not a guy going into the draft that was expected to be taken fifth overall. People thought back half of the first round, second round pick. So I think that this was a surprise for all of us. I don't think, I mean, Hobgood was the second pitcher off the board after Strasburg. I don't think he's the second best pitcher in this draft. I would have taken Wheeler, Minor League, Turner, Storen, Matzek, Crow, just to name a few of the starting pitchers all over him. So I don't really get the pick. I don't think he deserves to be a first round pick. I think someone's going to see, oh, he's the fifth overall pick. Like, I should take him later in the draft. And that's fine if you want to gamble on him with a late second round pick or a third round pick. But boy, I'm not touching Matt Hopgood under any circumstance. That pick made no sense to me, and I think all Orioles fans have the right to be frustrated, especially after last year they excited us by taking Brian Mattis, who is already developing into one of the top starting pitcher prospects in the league. I expect him to anchor his Orioles rotation for years to come. The year before, they took Matt Wieters, who looks like he's going to be the next big thing at catcher. And I know there's a lot of Orioles fans who are really high on the Billy Rowell pick in 2006. I mean, I know the next pick after that was Tim Lincecum, and I know he's done quite well for himself. But I know a lot of Orioles fans still hold out hope for Billy Rowell. So, I don't think Hobgood is quite on the level of those guys, but yeah, he doesn't deserve to be a first round pick.
No, and we'll see. Maybe he gets taken in the first. There's still two picks left, and if not, I think somewhere in the second round he'll find his home.
Won't be with me. So.
Right, and Connor's pick is in, and with the 11th pick in the 2010 minor league prospect draft, Connor and Connor have selected Mike Minor. Starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, not surprised to see Connor and Connor picking at 11th again. This team has really dominated the league throughout the 2000s, and I'll be really interested to see what this new decade brings for them.
Yeah, just that insistence on getting all these White Sox players. I mean,
guys like Jim Thome. Mark Burley's just consistent in that rotation.
I mean, Paul Konerko at first base. Is there anyone better besides Pujols, of course?
Yeah. I feel like the only thing that could stop Connor is the White Sox going into a rebuild here in a couple of years, if some of their players age out. But, I mean, man, it seems like Connor's going to be dominating this league for years to come. But let's dig into this Mike Minor pick a bit. I mean, obviously, we thought, hey, maybe he goes Jared Mitchell, the outfielder the White Sox took 23rd overall, or maybe even Josh Fegley, the catcher that they took 38th overall in the supplemental first round. But I guess Connor recognized value where there is value. Mike Minor, I think, is the best player left on the board. I think he appropriately takes him. College starting pitcher. Should probably come up relatively shortly, can make an impact in that Braves rotation. I have no problems with this pick. I think it's the right pick to make at this point. I think maybe an argument could be made that, he could have gone for one of these bats, like Grant Green or Randall Grichuk. But, it just feels like the best player left on the board to me. I don't have a problem with this pick or too much more to add. I feel like we've talked about Minor a bit in some of these other segments.
Yeah. I agree. Last year, he started out in Single A, and he only pitched 4 games, but he allowed 1 run rather, 0.714 WHIP. Didn't walk a single batter. God, I mean, he's not as high on some of the prospect rankings, but if you look at, he was picked 7th overall. He pitched well in the minors. How could you resist?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good pick, and I expect him to be in Connor's rotation shortly enough, or probably in reality traded for a White Sox starting pitcher. So, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the White Sox don't have any prospects currently in MLB's top 50, sadly, so won't be anyone he can trade for there. But yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, EBO's pick is in, the defending champions. And with the 12th pick in the 2010 minor league prospect draft, the executive batting order has drafted Ryota Igarashi of the New York Mets, starting pitcher from Japan.
Yeah.
Or relief pitcher from Japan, rather.
Yeah, I'll briefly say, like Connor, I'm not surprised EDO finished here with the championship. They had both Verlander and this year's breakout star for the Tigers, Max Scherzer, with a 3.5 ERA. So when you have those two anchoring your rotation, not just now, but for the years to come, like, whew, that's going to be a good team. And I think Igarashi, is the type of guy we mentioned before the draft started that, like, look, if you are a winning team now and you're in need of bullpen help, probably the type of guy you should go for. So I like this kind of aggressive win now move for EBO. And, I think he'll slot nicely behind K-Rod. He'll be the 8th inning guy for a Mets team that I project to be pretty solid. And maybe even step into the closer's role if K-Rod gets hurt or ineffective, or if they want to ship him off, in a couple of years to shed some salary. So I think a good move by them, given where they're at. Now, that being said, I think there are a lot better players on the board that they could have taken to really help that farm system. But given where they are in the league, I think that this makes sense. And, if this works out, I wouldn't be surprised to see him taking another Japanese player here, in a few years, because it seems like, they might just have a good track record of picking those guys.
Yeah, we'll see if this works out. And yeah, it feels like a bit of what we call an Eric move. I mean, obviously Eric wasn't that great this year, but having a reliever you can count on who's also prospect eligible is really something that he's done, and I think it's something that EBO really thinks is a good strategy. And we've talked a lot about Igarashi in the pregame. So let's talk a little bit about guys who we think we're not going to be covering the second round, but who do you think could be some of the guys who will go off the board early in the second?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I can go first, actually. A couple guys stand out. Miguel Sano signed for the second largest signing bonus in history as an international prospect. Of course, couldn't top last year's mark, which was set by Michael Yanoa, the starting pitcher, of course, with the Athletics for $4.25 million. That's not going to be topped anytime soon. But Sano was number 2 on that list at $3 million, and the Twins like him. They think he's big for a shortstop, so he may not be able to stick there. But I think a team could get a steal with him in the second round. And I believe, with the exception of Hobgood, the only top 10 draft pick available is Drew Storen, and he projects primarily as a reliever in the majors, which is why teams are probably not super high on him. Why would you draft what is a reliever prospect anyway? But, I mean, he's electric.
Yeah, and, I wonder if, for a team that's really looking for a reliever, or a team that might just look at who's, like, the best, the top pick that's left in the draft, like Drew Storen would be good. I mean, like you said, I think he's going to be a reliever, but he could be a pretty damn good reliever, and we know how much value, saves and holds and kind of helping managing the ratios has in this league. And I know certain teams, as their starting pitchers age, and maybe they might want to shift to this bullpenning strategy, and Drew Storen could be a guy that could really anchor that. I think Grant Green is also someone who could be a solid shortstop prospect. 13th overall player left on the board. I think he could potentially go a couple more names just as you're kind of looking down the rest of the first round. Alex White out of UNC. I know the Indians really like him. He's someone I think is a decent amount of potential. And then AJ Pollock, polished college hitter. I think he will probably go in this round. And same with someone like Shelby Miller, high school pitcher, but a pretty solid arm. Also drafted by an organization that historically does well in developing pitching, the St. Louis Cardinals. So I expect him to go in this round.
Yeah, I agree. And Aaron Crow is a guy you had mentioned during the first round that you thought maybe. But yeah, I agree. Should be a fun second round and third round of the draft. But that's it for our coverage. Do you have anything to say before we sign off?
No, not really. All I could say is it's going to be a fun 2010 MLB season.
I agree. I mean, the Reds look like they might have turned a corner last year. I'm excited in that aspect.
Yeah, and maybe Brian Mattis makes an impact for the Orioles this year, and Matt Wieters, Adam Jones, Nick Markakis. Maybe we even see Felix Piet do a bit more, or maybe Luis Montañez. What a stud he was for them. Nolan Reimold. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, sounds great. They could be an exciting team in a couple of years. And yeah, signing off here, and we'll see you all next year for the 2011 prospect draft.